1977, when Bob had his iconic store, Ramblin Conrad's Guitar Shop and Folklore Center. Very important, those last words. It was a folklore center. It was also a not-for-profit business, although they didn't know it at the time they opened it.
And it makes me.
It would still be there today had we
That's
known
exactly right. But anyway, the accountant in the back room on this snowy February day in 1977 came up to the front where Bob was picking on an instrument kind of like that, and the accountant, who was Bob's mom, Margie, said,
She opened the mail.
said a letter came in the mail and I think you're going to want to open this one. And it was addressed just
We were used to opening the other kind.
That's right, yeah. This was addressed just to Bob Zentz, Hampton Road in Norfolk, Virginia. No number, no zip code, no nothing. Hampton Road, which doesn't exist, by the way, but the post office knew where to find him. And it had been written in Hendersonville, Tennessee on February the 6th, 1977. And it says, Dear Bob, I have listened to your album, Mirrors and Changes, all the way through, both sides. Remember when albums had sides? I think it's one of the finest works I've heard by any artist. For me, it brings back memories of 62 and 63 and 64 when I was bumming around Greenwich Village with Ramblin' Jack, Ed McCurdy, and Peter Lafarge. I knew lots of Ramblin' Conrads, and I suppose I was even him for a while. Sure looking forward to meeting you. You've made a new fan in me. God bless you, Johnny Cash.
That was Johnny.
And it cost Bob, here we go. That was the sound of the hereafter. My goodness. It caused Bob to kind of think back to where the journey had begun, at that time just 12 years earlier, on a December evening in 1965, heading back from a gig at the Norfolk Naval Station.
And the weather was not like it is today. Kind of rainy on Hampton Boulevard, across from where the TED is now, that Convention Convocation Center. And Ben Herndon and Brian Huddy and I were driving home from a kind of lifeless gig at the Norfolk Naval Air Station. And we saw this old fella on the street wearing a slouched army hat over his head with an old K F-hole guitar slung across his back, heading south on Hampton Boulevard on the west side of the street. And we had heard all those stories about those famous blues guitar players being found and rediscovered in the higgledy-wiggledy parking lots of the South. And we thought, hey, this could be our big break. This could be our chance to find a real folk icon. We pulled over to the curb and we said to him, say, old timer, can you play that thing? And he immediately swung that guitar around from his back. He had one of these sort of shoestring guitar straps. And there on the street in the rain, he commenced to sing a song which sounded somewhat familiar to us. It sounded like this. Everybody's going out and having fun. Sound familiar? Well, I'm stuck down here on St. Bride's Farm, just having none. St. Bride's Farm, but we knew that Hank Williams had not spent his undergraduate days on the agricultural prison farm out in Chesapeake, Virginia, called St. Bride's. He continued on. He said, everybody's out on a spree. All but me. Try it with us. Well, everybody's going out and having here on the St. Bride's farm, just having fun out on the spree. And everybody's out on a spree. All but me. Well, he said one night I got drunk and I was heading for home. Well, I run into a couple of cops and they would not leave me alone. And they said they would take me now, that I would be St. Bride's bound. 'Cause everybody's going out having fun. Stuck down here, I'm stuck down here on St. Bride's farm, having none. And everybody's out on the spree. All but me. Everybody's going out having fun. I'm stuck down here on St. Bride's farm, just having none. And everybody's out on the spree. All but me. Well, now they got me down here. They got me a picking peas. Well, I picked so many peas, my fingers are killing me. And I guess I was born just to lose. Sing nothing but the doggone St. Bride's blues. 'Cause everybody's going out and having fun. I'm stuck down here on the St. Bride's farm, just having none. And everybody's out on a spree. All but me. But we said, where are you headed? He said, I'm going to the Domino Bar and Grill to get me a cold one. And we thought we had something here because we knew that that song had been a Hank Williams hit, but we never heard those words to it, and it turned out that those were his words that he had written from his own personal experience. So we said, Domino Bar and Grill down here on the right-hand side of the street, just before you get to the underpass that always floods, even more now. And so we ran back to our apartment, grabbed ourselves a tape recorder, and came back to the Domino Bar and Grill, loaded for recording this folk icon. We saw him sitting all alone, pulled up a chair, and said, well, play us another song, Conrad. And he said, oh, Bob, I'm just an old rambling man. I ramble around this town from town to town. We never could figure out the zen of rambling around this town from town to town, but it sounded good to us. He started to play a tune, and the bartender immediately came up and said, hey, you can't play that thing in here. We don't have an entertainment license. And besides, he would take business away from the jukebox. And so we were asked to leave the place, and we headed over to the nearest laundromat that we could find on 38th Street, the old 38th Street laundromat. They didn't have a bartender or a jukebox, but they had lots of bored people watching their laundry go around and around in circles. And the very first song that I think he meant for that bartender went something like this. Also sounded kind of familiar. Sounded real familiar.
Because it was Saturday night. That's why it sounded really
It was Saturday night, and he sang, "It's Saturday night. I ain't got no money, ain't got no one to buy me no beer. All I got is my old guitar, but I can't play it in here." Try that. It's Saturday night and I ain't got no money, ain't got no one to buy me no beer. All I got is my old guitar, but I can't play it in here. He said it's Saturday night and I'm on the ramble. Ramblin's all I do. I wish I could just find some good fella to buy me a bottle of brew. And it's Saturday night, I ain't got no money, ain't got no one to buy me no beer. All I got is my old guitar, but I can't play it in here. You know, I've heard it said, the time is money, I'm broke, and I ain't got a dime. But would anybody here care to work a little slop? Because I sure got plenty of time. And it's Saturday night, I ain't got no money, ain't got no one to buy me no beer. All I got is my old guitar, but I can't play it in here. It's Saturday night and I'm on the ramble. Rambling's all I do. Wish I could find me some ODU student who would buy me a bottle of brew. And it's Saturday night, I ain't got no money, ain't got no one to buy me no beer. All I got is my old guitar, but I can't play it in here. Well, we must have recorded 100 songs that night. He never repeated a song, and we ran out of tape before we finished. But the sun was coming up, and we drove him back to the house he lived in and stayed in. He lived with an old lady named Mrs. Viola Buford on, which street was it, Jeanne?
39th at Bluestone.
Always keep a PhD historian around to come up with those dates and times. And we let him off at the door and we said, tomorrow night we're going to come back and we are going to take you down to a place in Virginia Beach called the Upstairs Coffee House, run by a friend of ours named Herb Selby. And I think that he would be happy to hire you to join the group of musicians who played these late night gigs down at Virginia Beach. Now this was in the winter time. In the summertime, it was a going occupation, and many musicians came down to Virginia Beach, played their regular gigs at the Rathskeller or the Surf Rider, and after they got off, somewhere around midnight to 1 o'clock, people would go to the Upstairs, because it was open till 4 o'clock in the morning, and do their second gig of the night. Go home, sleep all day, and start the cycle all over again. And the people who played at the Upstairs Coffee House, well, they were some wonderful musicians. And one of our favorites was Emmylou Harris, who was at that time a waitress at the Puritan Restaurant on the corner of
17th Street.
Atlantic Avenue and 17th Street. And after she got off waitressing, she would come up and play songs and join in the song circles that we had. Was cutting her teeth on all kinds of good music in those days. Well, we brought Conrad in for this audition, and he was a little bit nervous. Well, the reason he was nervous is because the night before we had gone to pick him up. We promised him we'd come and bring him down to the Upstairs, and when we got there, the old lady, Miss Burford, said, "Oh, he never came home last night. The police probably picked him up." And so we were really depressed, and we drove around for a little while, and then we went home and we called a bunch of police stations. And it turned out he was in the Norfolk City Jail, drunk tank, $13.50 bail. So we went down to the coffee house without him, but with the tape that we had made the night before, set it on a little stool, about that size, in front of a microphone, and we commenced to play that album of songs that he had recorded for us. And one of them, I remember, was one that was a big Jimmy Rogers hit. I believe it was his first blue yodel. Now, blue yodeling was originated by Jimmy Rogers from taking the blues and country music and combining the two. And this blue yodel sounded like T for Texas, T for Tennessee. Lord, it's T for Texas, T for Tennessee. And it's T for Thelma, that gal who made a wreck out of me. And then his voice broke a little bit, so he said, gal who made a wreck out of me. And then he went, yodeling, yodeling, yodeling.
Try it.
Now, good exercise is to give this a try. You don't have to be a Caruso to do it. All you have to do is just think of Star Wars and old Yoda and sing, yodeling, yodeling, yodeling. It's good for breaking your leash too if you need an excuse. Gonna buy me a shotgun with a big long shiny barrel. Gonna buy me a shotgun with a big long shiny barrel. I'm gonna shoot that round just to see him pound. Yodeling, yodeling, yodeling. Well, I'm going where the water tastes like sherry wine. Going where the water tastes like sherry wine. You know that York River water, Lord, it tastes like turpentine. Yodeling, yodeling, yodeling. Yodeling. Yodeling, yodeling, yodeling. So it's T for Texas, T for Tennessee. Lord, T for Texas, T for Tennessee. That gal who made a wreck out of me. Everybody try it now. Good for your lungs. Yodeling, yodeling, yodeling. Yodeling.